Hi, welcome to Culture Counts Connection web series. My name is Jordan Gibbs. I'm the client director here at Culture Counts. Over the past few weeks, we've been running some conversations about topics of interest and our evolving circumstances. So today, we're talking about adapting, going online, and for that, I'm joined by Chris Van Tuinen from the West Australian Opera. Chris, hi. Thanks for being here.
Hi Jordan, how you going?
Yeah, I'm very well, and I'm even the better for seeing you. Um, I'd love to. I just want to kind of just jump straight into it. So, do you think you could give us a bit of a background on where the opera was pre-COVID, what your thinking was when COVID started happening, and what you ended up doing in a response? It'd be great to get an insight into on the
We,
ground.
so where we were at was we had started the 2020 season, which was my first season with the opera programming. The year we had done a really successful season of Brand New Day at the Perth Festival, and we had done a new production of Hansel and Gretel for Opera in the Park, which was seen by about 12,000 people. That was towards the end of February. A week later, our chorus went in to work with Wazzo and the orchestra on Fidelio, and we were getting ready for our next seasons, which was Tim Finn's Star Navigator in the concert hall, and then Mendelssohn's Elijah at UWA. And on the Friday, 2 weeks before the first performance, the world premiere of Star Navigator, which has taken nearly 8 years to get from page to stage,
Oh, wow.
we were informed that the government restrictions were down to 500 and there were travel limitations happening. So the opera company, being an extremely nimble team of 9 people, all of a sudden pushed the eject button on the 2020 season and shut everything down.
That must have been a real blow.
Well, I mean, it was a real blow for a number of reasons. The first being that, we live to see these things happen. We kind of, the thrill for us is that moment of live performance when, a singer at full flight and an orchestra in full force, is reaching out across space in order to, move the minds and souls of an audience who are physically in the same room as you. So to not do that, I mean, obviously there's a shock and a readjustment. Everyone started working from home. We ended up working from home for about 14, 15 weeks. We're still fairly flexibly working. Opera companies are pretty fortunate anyway, I think, like a lot of arts companies, because we have been working from home and working flexibly for about 400 years now. So we're all pretty good at taking the time. Like, as you can see, my study behind me with my books and my piano is, this is my home office. So I spend a lot of time here, and then we come together when we need to. So we then needed to pivot to not necessarily to do opera online, but more importantly to stay connected with our audience and stay connected with the artists that we work with and stay connected with the other opera companies that we interact with, and that's what.
So that was your thinking process, really, is that, like, after you push the eject button, and then the shock of COVID, which I think for everyone, the priority was to, well, how do we remain connected?
I think it's really important. We all felt kind of frightened and disconnected, and our human interaction was shattered in a way. We haven't been able to visit loved ones interstate and overseas. So how can we stay connected? Art is one of the great things that binds us together. Opera is particularly good at that, in my view, because it tells stories, and those stories have common themes, and those stories are told through music and singing, and that's, for me, the easiest way into the soul.
So then I guess the next thing, if you wanted to stay connected, was going online.
Yeah, and going online, there's already a huge amount of content. online. I mean,
Yeah.
there's no, as much as I love West Australian opera, we don't have the budget of the Metropolitan, who have been
Mm.
putting full scale operas online for, for decades, and have this huge library of high quality, high definition, multi camera recorded. So
Content, yeah.
just generating content is an issue. We had thought that we would like to record a number of arias, and we're blessed to have a lot of great singers in Perth, and so we got them on stage to record their party pieces. Our executive director Carolyn Chard came up with the concept of the ghost light, that we would,
Yes.
that theory that's that tradition in the theatre, that when the theatre's shut down, you hang a light in there just so that the ghost of the theatre's not left in the dark.
Yeah.
And so that was quite a funny situation, because we had planned to spend the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday of that week recording these arias, and then on the Sunday night we were told by government that at lunchtime the next day the theatre would be shut down completely and there would be no access to the stage. So we moved everything to Monday morning, and if a tenor is going to turn up and sing Puccini's Nessun Dorma at 9:30 on a Monday morning, he needs to be a pretty good one. So,
Yeah.
luckily that was Paul O'Neill, and we do that, and then we started thinking about the other content, and for me that covered the whole range of the opera company. So the singing classes was a really good example of that. We would normally get about 50, 60 people on a Monday night come into the theatre for the West Farmers Arts singing classes, adult singing.
Yeah. So just to clarify, the singing classes was something that the opera was already doing.
Yes, we were already doing them. We've been doing them for some time. Lisa Harper Brown takes them. We get a great group of people coming every Monday night to learn how to sing from the opera company, and that's it's a lot of fun, and they're a really interesting an eclectic group of people.
They're a great group. I've been to a couple actually.
So yeah, I mean, it's a huge amount of fun. Anyway, so that we decided to go online. So we basically said to Lisa, look, I know you've planned out the next 6 weeks or so. Why don't we just put you in the studio and just run the tape over them, and we'll send them out every Monday morning for free. People can register. And to date, we've had about 2,000 registrations for those adult singing classes.
Wow.
From
quite a way up from just under 100.
Yeah, and from all around the world as well. I mean, I was getting hilarious emails from people in regional centres of other states who were saying, look, we're really enjoying the singing classes. Lisa's so much better than our local choir conductor, but please don't tell them that. So there was an extra audience there, and in a way, people felt as comfortable, or probably more comfortable, doing their singing classes at home online than they did coming into the theatre, where they probably felt self-conscious.
Yeah.
It was the PE with Joe idea, actually, that was sort of what was making me think about that. The UK guy that was running a little half-hour PT class, PE class.
Oh yes.
PE class.
Yes.
Class every morning at 9:00, just from his living room, and he was getting 2.5 million viewers every morning, just sort of signing up to
doing a workout with him.
Just do a little workout. And I was thinking, well, what's the opera version of that? So then that was kind of fun, and then that led on to the singing classes for children, which Perry Joyce ran, which have been really successful. And then that of course then leads into podcasts, and all the way up to us filming an opera in lockdown of a brand new production of Minotti's The Telephone, which was filmed in lockdown over Zoom.
Yeah. Wow. So essentially the kind of the exploration into, I guess, going online has kind of, led to a whole bunch of different things as you've tried it and explored it.
Well, yeah, and I don't think we're unique in that. I don't think West Australian opera is unique in that. I think that's the question that most artists ask themselves in every situation, and that is, how does this affect my art and what I'm going to do? And and there's a question of authenticity in there, which is, I was asked fairly early on, would we do a kind of Zoom choir recording? And I thought, yeah, well, we could, if we wanted to work with Wazzo or the ballet, so we could sort of stitch something together. But to be honest, after a couple of days, when all of those choir Zoom mashups came out,
Yeah.
it's not an authentic response. Then you need to
No.
move on to the
No.
next thing.
And so I guess that's kind of the that's kind of the main thing with, I guess, going online, right? Is that if you can kind of keep what it is that you're trying to achieve, like the outcomes, whether or not, you said it was connection, but then also, I guess, making sure that's authentic, so that you're not just kind of doing what other people are doing. Like that's an important thing.
It's really important. I think it's really important because I think people can see through it when it's not, I mean, I can make it. We can make a beautiful kind of 4-minute version of O mio Babino Caro, and have some beautiful imagery and all that, and then it just looks like an ad for Makona.
Yeah.
Which is great. Like, fine. I mean, if you want to sell coffee, that's what you want to do. But if it's not authentic, then people can kind of see through it more easily, and then what's the point?
Yeah, of course. Well, look, let's talk about the kind of things that you the outcomes that you achieved in the audience experiences, and I guess your own kind of personal learnings as well. So, you said that sense of connection was important, and I guess then that authenticity kind of speaks to that. I'm just wondering also if there were what were the challenges, and also the kind of unexpected benefits that kind of came out of this that you might not have seen. I mean, we all know, and I've heard it a lot during this phase as well, is that, digital is not a replacement for the experience of a live event, and I'm sure you very much agree. But I just kind of think, what were the other things that maybe you didn't think you would have found through digital before you had tried it?
Yeah, I mean, there's I think for those of us who have done a lot of recordings in the past, there was a little bit more comfortable going online.
Yeah.
Because the weird thing about a recording is that you're playing your heart out, and you're going, you're absolutely in the moment, you're going nuts, and you're used to doing that in a concert hall and having the live feel of people around you responding to what's going on. Whereas in a recording session can feel quite antiseptic. A little bit of a letdown as well. You just kind of smash through a Beethoven sonata faster than anyone else, and there's not tumultuous applause.
There's no one here to tell you how great you were.
So I think we're pretty well used to that, and I think going online, that lack of connection or immediate feedback is kind of really interesting for us to sort of play around with. Yeah, also maybe some of the barriers are reduced as well. I mean, I now know more about what my colleagues' houses look like than I ever did before.
Yep.
So there's a kind of, also I've kind of met everyone's pets. And I've met their kids, and do you know what I mean? Like, there's a little bit more of a community-ness to it, if that's a word.
Yeah, there's definitely a reality to a lot of the connection that sometimes even the arts is good at kind of putting up this thing that makes it, like, some people not feeling comfortable coming into a theatre.
Yeah, there's that threshold anxiety, isn't there, where people aren't quite sure how to cross the threshold. So sort of art that we're making at the moment sort of fixes that. We did, and then one of the other opportunities, which was it's a practical and financial and sector necessity, and that is that a lot of the government employment support packages didn't capture freelance artists.
Yes.
And so it was very much our thinking at the opera company that there's a group of singers and musicians out there, and wig makers and dressmakers and stage managers and gaffers and electricians and mechanists, and I mean, you go to the opera and you see a soprano on stage, you don't realize that there's actually 200 people around her making that thing happen.
Yeah, there's a whole mechanism supporting it.
And so part of the online activity for us, part of the side benefits, was that we could pay people to record their aria in their living room, and then we could distribute that through our channels, and then we could flick them, some money to do that.
Yeah, people could still get some work.
Yeah, so we set up a COVID artist relief fund where people could, and then we can talk about that quite publicly, and then the people who are connected to the opera company can see that there's a benefit in engaging with that. So there's an authenticity there. Also, there's someone singing Una voce poco fa in their kitchen as the cat runs across in front. It's kind of great. There's a reduction in the barriers in a way.
Yeah. Do you think that audiences then, from that perspective, did want to, especially the engaged ones? I mean, the thing about arts audiences is that they are generally so engaged and so in love with both the art form and then the sector. Do you feel like that kind of let them, be able to feel like they were supporting the entire ecology when it was having so much trouble?
Yeah, I mean, I think they did. I think people also appreciate being able to do it in their own time.
Yeah.
They understand. I think one of the best things about the online experience is that you can pick and choose when that happens. I have a famously short attention span. Yeah. So unless I'm like trapped in a theatre, then I'm very happy watching an opera across 3 or 4 sittings.
Yeah.
Which is great. That suits me really well, and it gives me time to think. And then I also feel like there's a lot of stuff everyone's been putting out, and our audiences are just happy to see that it's still going on.
Yeah.
Even they might not catch it all, they're very happy to see it fly by.
It certainly does kind of, bore you when, a lot of this experience is tough for so many people, but then be able to see that is quite, it does kind of fill you with a positive sense of things, which is nice.
Yeah, and then there needs to be a connection, doesn't there? We need to connect with people in order to, share what we have. And so I think in terms of, I think some of those are the opportunities. I think people are putting a bit too much weight on things sometimes, and I think it's quite hard to work out, are people watching a video because it's good or because it's bad or because it's, the quality question for me is one of the barriers. There's certainly been stuff that I've seen that have been very casually put up online, and lots of people are watching it, but because for all the wrong reasons.
Yes.
So I think measuring the number of views or the number of likes is an interesting measure.
Yeah, it's an interesting dynamic. I mean, I know so the WA Opera did do some evaluation of its online program, both the Ghostlight Opera and then the singing classes, and for the the kind of quality questions about whether or not it was it was kind of well thought through and put together, like the responses from participants was extraordinary. I think that sometimes there is a bit of anxiety about kind of going online and then like will this be of the same quality as the kind of rest of my program that like my audience is so interested into. But the participants in the singing classes like had the best time according to the responses, like in terms of them thinking that like it moved and inspired them. Like the responses that they were giving for that were equivalent to the responses that the opera was getting for its live program last year.
Yeah, and look, it's really good to see, and it's it's a testament to the whole team as well, because we can put the best singing teacher in front of a camera, but unless it's beautifully shot, beautifully edited, beautifully marketed, beautifully distributed, beautifully engaged with, then it's not really going to have the sort of Porsche. And I don't think
Yep.
people realise how quickly arts and culture became, sort of ad hoc film and television studio production houses. Like
Yeah.
we all got so good at it. We're so fast. And
Yeah. It was almost like, it was 5 years of innovation in the course of a couple of weeks, really.
yeah, and I actually think that's really good for us. As kind of painful as it is, it can be really good to actually go through that. I mean, the Leonard Bernstein quote I keep using all the time, and that is, the only two things you need for greatness are a good idea and not quite enough time.
That's a wonderful quote. Um, and I guess then in terms of the online programming, like, uh, you know, what's your feeling about how when when lockdowns come out or whatever ends up happening, and we can start um, performing live again? Do you think that there's kind of a complementary aspect here in terms of being able to do the digital programs and then audiences coming back to see
Yeah,
live
I
opera?
mean, I say this with all the love in the world, but the genie's out of the bottle now,
Yeah.
and there's I've always believed that new mediums, new ways of distributing content should be absolutely at the core of what we do, or at least part of what we do. They've often seemed like an add-on because we're too busy getting La Traviata onto the stage and getting the chorus to stand in the right place and getting the orchestra to play in the right time and all that sort of stuff. And so
Yes, just getting the show up.
getting the show
Yeah.
up, and there's like, oh crap, we need to turn a camera on somewhere here and make sure that this goes out. Yeah, I think we absolutely need to do it. We need to do it. We've certainly, with the space for me where it's interesting is we filmed The Telephone, which was absolutely for film. We might do that again. We might do projects like that again, which are operas that are specifically designed, chosen, and directed for film, which might be interesting. We might commission things with a digital lens on them rather than a stage lens, which then gets kind of mashed into a digital.
Yeah.
The education and outreach piece is core. I think we were absolutely doing that. We've got a fantastic team at the Opera Company, and they were into live, before this happened, they were into live streams and they were into regional venues, and there was a definite kind of attempt to reach as far out into the state as possible. And they were doing that really successfully, and I think this has just proven how valuable that knowledge and that drive is. So yeah, I do think it's never going to replace what we do on the stage, but it's definitely going to be complementary.
Yep, absolutely. And so then I guess then, in terms of like where you think how this experience has kind of made you think about the future, and the future is still uncertain, you know. But even reflecting on your experience and how you think it's, has it changed where you maybe thought you were going pre-COVID? And I also wonder, what kind of lessons you think that others out there from the sector can take from your experiences.
Well, I mean, we're not even getting near post-COVID yet, are we? So
No.
I'm certainly thinking about what 2021 program and 2022 program. And I mean, for those people watching, I was in the midst of working out what 2022 was going to look like at the beginning of 2020 because we planned 2-3 years in advance. And so that's all been messed up. And we also don't know whether we can gather people back in the theatre again, although we do have some optimism about that. We also part of a global community, so people can't travel into Perth as they used to. So, I mean, it just changes all of that. I mean, what has been heartening for me is that the industry has shown itself to be flexible and responsive and understanding, and that's going from artistic directors to audiences to artists. Everyone's trying to make it work. And I think from that, we're going to see some really interesting things.
Yeah.
I
I
think it's
agree.
given us
I agree.
I think it's given us permission to say, well, we can't do that thing. We can't do that thing. So now we have to think about all the other things we can do, which
Yeah,
is nice for a heritage art form. I think of
absolutely.
just I kind of finish up, I guess. I think of Peter Sculthorpe, the great Australian composer, who said that when people would ring him up and say, Peter, we'd like you to write a piece, it was like the worst news because the open ended offer was just terrifying.
Mm.
It's like when people
Yeah, you need boundaries. Do a great job of focusing your attention to achieve something.
absolutely when people Peter, we want you to write a string quartet, no more than 12 minutes long. It's got to be about Darwin, and it's got to be 3 movements, and it's got to be able to be played by 16-year-olds. You think, all right, okay, I've got to,
All right, I can figure this out.
I can figure this out. And I think for us, that's the situation we're in at the moment.
Wonderful. Well, look, thanks, Chris. It's been great to hear about where you've been and how the West Australian Opera has adapted during this time. So, thank you for joining us, and Chris Van Tuinen, thanks for taking the time to share.
Thanks very much for having me.
So, be sure to check out the West Australian Opera's excellent content and programs on their website. If you want to find out more about Culture Council or want to explore some of the resources we have available, you can visit our website or our Arts Matters page. If you'd like to get in contact or have any questions you would like answers to, you can send us an email at hello@culturecounts.cc. But until then, we'll see you next time. Cheers.